for first, 750,000 for second. Top 20 places here all get at minimum 6 figures. So we are going to get in. There are 10 spots open in this draft. If anybody else wants to hop in with us, now's your shot. But yeah, thank you so much for everybody coming, spending their fine Saturday night with us. And I actually drafted a beautiful team earlier this morning that we can possibly go through, revisit, look at, and I can flex. I'll give you the exciting parts of that team. That team, we got Travis Kelce in the late 4th. We got Mahomes in the early 5th. Then we got Xavier Worthy in the late 6th. So that was a beautiful, beautiful situation. Here we're at pick 11, so it's going to be a little bit tougher than when you have those top 5 picks, but we'll make it work nonetheless. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out. I don't know what WSG means. What does WSG mean, my friend? Alex says Tyreek or Jefferson. Good to go with Tyreek. If you look at Vegas implied team totals right now, you actually have the Dolphins projecting out to be like the 4th best offense in the NFL this season. And obviously, it's going to be difficult for Minnesota to score that many points with McCarthy. Okay. Henry says, you have to remember, Mason, we are hit with the commercial. So when you jump into a contest, we don't get the chance because we are 5+ seconds behind. If you're 5+ seconds behind, we sat in this lobby for quite some time, my friend. Second thing is to give you and let you know I don't make any money regardless off of this. It makes no difference to me. But a life hack for you. YouTube Premium is $22 a month. No commercials at all. No ads. And what's honestly maybe even better is you can close the app, like you can close your phone, and the audio keeps going in the back. So I think it's $22 a month, something like that. If it is $22 a month, it is the best $22 a month I spent. I'll tell you that much. It is phenomenal, but I'm a YouTube sicko. I am watching YouTube videos from the second I wake up to the second I go to bed, pretty much. WSG means what's good. I'm sorry. I'm an old man at this point. I have no idea. But Devin out here at pick 2, Hybrid Dad out here pick 10. Okay, excited to go for y'all. In says, have I been paying $22 for YouTube Premium? I thought it was cheaper. Maybe. I don't know, my friend. But if you were on the fence about YouTube Premium, I am a cheap individual, but I'm telling you right now, YouTube Premium's worth it. If you watch a lot of YouTube, I watch an absurd amount of YouTube. So it's definitely worth it for me. If you don't watch that much YouTube, then I wouldn't bother. But okay, so let's see. We have AJ Brown off the board. Puka Nacua goes. So it's a very boring pick. We'll take Garrett Wilson here at 11. The thing is, in these underdog drafts where wide receivers so gross later on and you need your receivers, I am never going through the first 2 rounds without at least one receiver. So Garrett Wilson feels like the grossest round 1 pick that we can possibly make, but we're going to have to take a wide receiver in round 2 if we don't take Garrett Wilson in round 1. Where here, going Wilson, I would have felt comfortable going Gibbs on the way back around. Now, once we go Wilson, I don't really know what we should do. I think you could make an argument for a couple different things. We're going to reach on Brandon Ayuk. I think Ayuk, London, Olave, Nico, Adams, Waddle. A lot of these receivers are on a similar tier. So typically, if I'm at the 1-2 turn, I like reaching just a bit past ADP. That way, maybe we have a little more of a unique start. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk here. Feels very gross in comparison to what you typically would get in round 1 and round 2 of a fantasy football draft. But, oh my gosh, not as gross as taking Amari Cooper at pick 15. Hybrid Dad, what are you doing, my guy? What are you doing? Apple Pink says 22 is the family plan. Okay, so I don't know. I'm making up numbers here. But Ricky says no JT is crazy there. So the thing with Jonathan Taylor is I think if you were in a regular redraft league, I would 100% advocate to go with Jonathan Taylor over Olave, over London, over Amari, over Ayuk, and I would even say maybe go Jonathan Taylor over Marvin Harrison Jr., possibly even go Jonathan Taylor over Garrett Wilson, if I'm going to be honest with you. The thing is, in these underdog drafts, where I know wide receiver is going to get so gross in the middle rounds, In the middle rounds, I know I'm going to be wanting to grab an elite quarterback, an elite tight end, maybe some running backs. I'm willing to make the slightly worse pick here at 14 at wide receiver than taking someone at pick 38 that I have absolutely no interest in at receiver. That is. Kate says, for Best Ball Mania, what month do you think gives you the best chance to win the tournament? I think it depends on the year. So last year, the best chance you would have had to win Best Ball Mania was if you drafted in August or September. The reason being is if you wanted to win last year, what was going to give you the best shot was if you were able to draft Kyron and Puka, or well, at least one of those guys, where those guys weren't really getting drafted in the summer. However, the year before, the winning team was drafted in the summer. But you can make an argument, well, the ADPs are so thrown off and they're very inefficient. Things aren't set in stone right when tournaments drop in May. So maybe May's the best time to go. So the reality is, I don't think that there is a quote unquote best time that you need to be drafting all your teams in this particular month. I think each time period has its pros and cons. Whenever I'm going to be drafting hundreds of teams on Underdog, I kind of need to be drafting the entire time, right? Because I'm not going to be able to go through, I'm not going to be able to max Best Ball Mania by waiting the week before the season starts and getting all my drafts in. So, yeah, I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to kind of balance things out. But HN here goes before Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's still falling. Pittman off the board. And yeah, of course, real quick, if you don't know what we're doing here, we're drafting on Underdog Fantasy. I draft here every single day. I've drafted here every single day for years and years and years. They're best ball drafts, so there's no time commitment at all during the season. So I draft hundreds of teams every offseason. So I won $150,000 on Underdog 2 years ago. And if you want to opt in a draft with us, like I said, we're doing this every single night. You can find that link in the description, in the comment section, in the live chats everywhere. And if you use code FLOCK when you sign up for Underdog, you would get my 2024 rankings, my 2024 draft guide. You'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250 if you have a new account as well. But to draft on Underdog, you have to be in one of these states. So that's the bad news. You have to be in one of these states. The good news is it's in 90% of states. Really, there are only like 2 or 3 populated states that you can't be in. But if you're in California, if you're in Texas, if you're in New York, if you're in Florida, you can draft on Underdog. Just Sherman says, HN or Swift? I'm sorry, HN or Swift and Keon in a Dynasty half PPR format? One, my friend, I will most likely get to your team breakdown tomorrow. I was looking at that previously. I'm probably going to be going with HN over Swift and Coleman in Dynasty. Benny says 12 team, pick 12. We went Gibbs, London, Diggs. I love Diggs 36. I love Laporta 47. Reed, White, Jameson, Jordan Love, Palmer, Benson, Goff, Ford, Michael Wilson. Like the start, like the very beginning, the only thing I may personally not have done myself is maybe Rashad White there. If we fell behind at wide receiver like that, maybe I'd have wanted to see what wide receivers were available in that range. But yeah, really interesting team, my friend. But yeah, similar to what you did, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Stephon Diggs at 35. I think Diggs is the last wide receiver in this tier before we're going to get a drop. But Diggs has obviously been falling for a while now. Okay, so DFM, let's see what they decide to do. They went Gibbs and Marvin out the gate. So they go Tank Dell. Dell was definitely going to be in play for us. Just knowing that we could have set ourselves up with the Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and then CJ Stroud in round 6 double stack. They go Laporta. So I've been on record. I've said this a ton. I will be underweight Derrick Henry, but my rule with Derrick Henry, because I understand he has upside, right? Derrick Henry could crush us with us not drafting a ton of him. He has an ADP of 31. He's usually going the middle round 3. Where we've said that we will take Derrick Henry is when he falls to round 4. Round 3, Derrick Henry, I'm not doing it. Round 3, I'm going to take a ton of Kyron Williams, just like what Nolan does there at 33. I'd way rather have Kyron. I'd way rather have Barkley. But if I'm going to get Henry, round 4 is the place to do so. Jake says he is pick 11 in his draft and just started off with Brees and Harrison. That is beautiful, my friend. Finkelson says thoughts on the projected point totals versus the real results. So this is something you're going to see at the end of your underdog draft that will give you like the projected points that you have for the season. And you can see it essentially too here when you're about to draft someone. You can see the projection for Jalen Hurts, 356 points. You can see what Travis Etienne, 216 points for the projection. And essentially what the projections say at the end of like your underdog draft, in my personal opinion, I think they're meaningless. I don't pay attention to them whatsoever. If you wanted to like look at serious projections on underdog and try to use them as tiebreakers in certain spots, I would definitely recommend on underdog looking at the NFL season-long pick'ems, such as like Deshaun Watson, 3,400 passing yards, Geno Smith, 22.5 passing touchdowns, 3-4-5-0. And the reason is on underdog, you can take the higher lower on these. So underdog has an incentive where they need to be about as accurate as they can possibly be with those pick'em lines those pick'ems that they put out, those projections. Whereas with the projections, just like the Jalen Hurts, 356 points, it doesn't matter. They can put out very bad projections on that front and it's whatever. And I have no idea when KY is getting NFL season-long pick'ems. My friend, I wish I knew. But Berg says, I agree with YouTube Premium. It's a game changer. Yeah, like I said, I am super cheap. I pay for very few subscriptions. But YouTube Premium, I think, is definitely worth it. And if YouTube, you want to hook me up with a kickback on that somehow, I'm off. I'm all ears. But obviously, jokes. Sadly, YouTube's not sponsoring me. I wish I was getting paid to shill YouTube Premium. I wish. Okay. And it says YouTube Premium is $14 a month plus the $7 flock tax. Yeah, plus the $7 flock shill tax. Henry says Hurts paired with Smith at 48 is crazy. Yes. That team at 1 that goes CeeDee Lamb, Devonta Smith, Achane, Jalen Hurts, Andrews. Freaking nuts. Way better of a start than what we have. That team at 1 is beautiful with getting Jalen Hurts there at 48. To have Hurts, Smith, and Lamb all in the same squad. Now let's move this around for us. So we have currently at running back Derrick Henry. At wide receiver, we have Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk, Stephon Diggs. Godwin just continues to skyrocket up these. Jay says he's at pick 1. Congrats, my friend. I mean, I don't know how much you were sweating Jalen Hurts making it to 48, but if I was in the middle of the 4th, I would have not let you get Jalen Hurts. That is freaking nuts, my guy. Okay. So Keenan, Ridley, both off the board. Hybrid Dad goes Pitt. So we're going to go Jaden Reed. This gives us the ability to go with Jordan Love a little later on. And it does put us in a spot where we are grabbing another receiver before the teardrop. Because what you have to do is you have to kind of predict where these teardrops are going to be. Our next selection is going to be 83 after the one we're about to make. And if you look at the ADP that you're going to have there, at running back, we'll have like Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harrison play for us. At wide receiver, our best option is going to be Jamison Williams. So I know for a fact that at the 7-8 turn, I do not want to be going with wide receivers. So it makes sense to get our receivers while we still can. Jordan Addison goes off the board at 61. So there are a couple different things that you can do. You can take Anthony Richardson here, even unstacked, given the rushing upside that he has. And clearly Anthony Richardson, someone that a lot of people are very excited about. He is going significantly ahead of CJ Stroud. But I'm willing to reach on Stroud over Anthony Richardson, even though there's that 9-pick gap in ADP. One, because I think CJ Stroud, honestly, I would rank him higher straight up in a vacuum. And 2, we also took Stephon Diggs with this team. So I know we were reaching on Stroud. I honestly don't care too much. This was a rookie quarterback. I mean, this was a quarterback that last year's a rookie, put up the best rookie QB season I've ever seen. He was in my mind, a legitimate MVP candidate as a rookie. Then you add in Stephon Diggs. Well, I think there's an outside chance that Diggs is the wide receiver one in this offense. So we're going for it. Ski says, I feel like Addison's been sniped from you so much recently. I'm okay with Jordan Addison getting sniped. I definitely see Jordan Addison as a riser in these drafts currently. But Jordan Addison's my most drafted player. So I want to say like 21% Jordan Addison, and I typically cap myself at 20% for any individual player. Some years it helps us. Last year it helped us not get completely wrecked by Lance. 2 years ago it hurt us with Jacobs and Mahomes. Obviously, if we would have let ourselves go 100% Jacobs, that would have been immaculate. But nonetheless, I'm probably going to keep that rule where we cap ourselves at 20%. So I don't know if we were wanting to mix in Addison, at least before ADP, right? Where if Addison, we can get him at or behind ADP, even though we already have so much of him, I'll still be happy to draft him. Anthony Richardson makes it all the way down to 67 in this draft. I think Richardson had an ADP of like 57. So that is a considerable drop. The team that takes him doesn't have any Colts, but like we said, Anthony Richardson's going to run the ball, so you don't necessarily need to have that stack. Okay. Pudgy says, just found out you can draft in my state. How did I not know? My guy, I wish that I showed the map every single live stream. Those are the states. Those are the states if you want to get in a draft. But let's move this over. Henry says that's about as far as I've seen Kelsey fall. So I actually got Kelsey, I want to say maybe at pick 44 earlier today off the stream, something around there. And then we did get Mahomes all the way back around. So I had a draft earlier today, which I was really excited about, where I think we went like Jefferson, Adams, rounds 1 and 2. Round 3, we grabbed Kyron Williams. Round 4, we went Kelsey. Round 5, we went Mahomes. And round 6, we went Xavier Worthy. So I really like that draft that we got in earlier today. Worthy makes it all the way down to 71. Worthy's for sure been a faller in these drafts. I've drafted a lot of Worthy. I prefer the Worthy price tag in comparison to the Hollywood price tag by a wide margin for these large field tournament contests where we are chasing the highest ceiling possible. I think Worthy has a higher ceiling than Hollywood. Okay. George Kittle makes it all the way down to pick 74 in this draft. That is beautiful. I mean, I would have loved to get Kittle there. Bone says, Mason, I just took Brees at 8. Tell me it's okay. Did something happen with Brees? I hope it's okay, my friend. Brees is probably my most drafted round 1 player. Just because I'm taking him over Bijan. Let me look. I'm taking Brees at 7, and a lot of drafts he'll fall to me at 8 and 9 as well. So naturally, I am really overweight Brees Hall. Let me pull this up. Brees. Yeah, I'm at 14% Brees Hall. RV says Keon's my favorite rookie wide receivers for his price. I did not like Keon Coleman as a prospect. Like coming out of Florida State, I thought he was really overrated for reasons X, Y, and Z. But at his cost, I am right there with you. Keon Coleman was a borderline round 1 NFL draft pick. And I tweeted this out 2 days ago, or I talked about it on the live stream too. But it's like, y'all remember in these underdog drafts 2 years ago, sickos were drafting Gabriel Davis in round 3 in like high stakes tournament drafts with me. I was in like $500 drafts, and I was watching people draft Gabe Davis in the 3rd round because of a playoff game and the fact that he was attached to Josh Allen, and the offense is so damn exciting from a best ball perspective where you're going to have an ungodly amount of points scored. And Gabe freaking Davis, a day 3 NFL draft pick that was decent in a limited sample, was a player going at the 3-4 turn. And now Keon Coleman is wide receiver 47, even if I don't like him as a prospect, as a borderline round 1 NFL draft pick going over to Buffalo with no Stephon Diggs. So Gabe Davis was going at the 3-4 turn when Stephon Diggs was there and when Stephon Diggs was in his prime. So, yeah, I expected not to have a lot of Keon Coleman this year. but I'm actually mixing him in a considerable amount. Burrow going off at 79, definitely really good for us, right? I mean, we don't have any of the Bengals. We already took CJ Stroud, so it's not like we're dying that we get a massive QB value. So we're going to take Evan Ingram primarily because we already have 4 wide receivers, right? It's not like the end of the world where we really, really needed to add in Keon Coleman. If Keon makes it back to us at 86, I'll for sure take him for the reasons we just mentioned. If not, I think we can go ahead and we can mix in one of these older, boring running backs here at 86. We're really just looking at those guys at the very top with Keon, Aaron Jones, and Najee Harris. Okay. Kerjaw, yeah, I saw the Bills head coach. I saw that quote. What I think a lot of people are doing is they're taking any little fantasy football news and running with it. Think about it. We hear from a coach that a 21-year-old's rookie wide receiver needs to work on his run blocking in late June, early July. And that means he's now a bad fantasy football. Like it's the definition of not having enough news, not having enough things to talk about, and making a mountain out of a molehill. So, like I said, I want to reiterate, there are a couple of these prospects I didn't like that landed in great spots. Didn't really like Keon Coleman as a prospect. Landed in a great spot. The wide receiver 47, give me him every day of the week. Ladd McConkey, I didn't really like him as a prospect. I feel like he is at a price where he goes alongside Rome, where it's like, whatever. I'll draft him if I'm going to target Herbert later on. But like I really like Rome as a prospect. The situation isn't as good. But yeah, even if I don't like Keon Coleman, he has the path to be the wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen. And he's going as wide receiver 47. Okay. Druss says, Allen about to feed Kincaid. I hope, my friend. I'm with you in hoping that. Let me see the amount of Dalton Kincaid that I have, because we have drafted a ton of elite tight ends round 5. I'm at 13% Kincaid, so definitely overweight Kincaid. I'm at 16% Keon Coleman after drafting him so much this week. I'm at 10% James Cook. I'm at 9% Josh Allen, 7% Shakir. So the guys I'm underweight in Buffalo, I'm only at 4% Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel's price is very bad. The thing is, seeing Curtis Samuel go at 89 and Keon Coleman at 84, why would I ever draft Curtis Samuel? Bones asking what percentage Pickens. I'm at 11% Pickens. Joshua says, dude, right, I'm thinking about drafting Keon Coleman over Brian Thomas in my Dynasty rookie draft. So Dynasty is a little bit different, where I think Dynasty, where we are thinking more long-term and not necessarily just short-term situations. I'm still for sure going to go like Brian Thomas Jr. over Keon Coleman, just because I think Brian Thomas Jr. is so much of a better player. I thought he was a much better prospect coming out. Then also he gets the better draft capital. So NFL talent evaluators kind of sign off on that idea as well. So like Dynasty, I'm not overreacting and I'm not screaming that Keon Coleman's a must draft guy. I just think that people have overreacted to the coaching blurb this week for Keon Coleman, or really over the past 2 weeks as ADP has fallen so far. Where now, anytime I need a receiver, Keon Coleman's like the last guy in that tier for me, where I'm willing to take him. Nate says, what are your thoughts on Pacheco this year with McKinnon gone? Pacheco and Jacobs are and Travis Etienne. There are 3 running backs that fall in a very awkward spot for me. Because with Etienne, Pacheco, and Jacobs, if I look at their profiles, I like all 3 running backs with their cost this year. Going in the late 4th, early 5th round, I think all 3 of those running backs are very compelling. But my issue is I also love drafting Mahomes there. I love drafting Andrews there. I love drafting Kincaid there. So I find myself a lot of times at the 4 or 5 turn going with the elite level tight end in comparison to the running back. So I think even though, like, in theory, I'd want to be overweight Etienne, overweight Pacheco, overweight Jacobs, I don't know if we drafted a ton of them just because of this section of the board. I just really like all the values that are there. Okay. So Mike Williams off the board. We could go Joshua. I don't really care. I think we may go Brian Robinson and then follow it up with Purdy on the way back around and pair him up with Ayuk. Because let's just take Brian Robinson, then we'll think about it. Our next pick after this is going to be 131. Quarterback stacking options that we're going to have for this team. We have Rodgers, Purdy, and then we could go Lawrence to pair up with Evan Ingram. But Lawrence, more likely than not, is not making it to 131. Joshua Palmer just went off the board, so we don't necessarily have the incentive to go Joshua Palmer and set ourselves up with Justin Herbert later on. So I think we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Purdy. I mean, right now, the Niners project out to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL, according to Vegas Sportsbooks. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with rushing the football. Obviously, Purdy doesn't have a ton of rushing upside, so he's going to be depressed a bit in fantasy drafts. But still, I love the Purdy price point. We get him paired up with Brandon Ayuk. Now we put ourselves in a position where we only have to draft 2 quarterbacks as well. So, yeah, I like it. Carson, happy to see you, my friend. Says, long time. I'm back in Norway up at 3 a.m. for the stream. Happy to see you, my friend. Thank you for staying up for us tonight. Okay. But, yeah, looking at this right now at wide receiver, we have Wilson, Ayuk, Diggs, Reed. Running back, we have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson. Quarterback, we have C.J. Stroud stacked up with Stephon Diggs. And we have Brock Purdy stacked up with Brandon Ayuk. Henry says, smash the like to get 300 for another draft. Yes, if you want to see another draft, go down there, hit that like button. Okay. Green Bay Hoops says, 9th pick in a redraft league. Do I take A.J. Brown or Garrett Wilson? I would rather have A.J. Brown over Garrett Wilson, but if it's a redraft league where you're going to start 2 receivers, 1 flex, I would honestly say that running back's in play for you there as well. I may go Gibbs over A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson if it's a very shallow, like ESPN league where you start 2 receivers, 1 flex. Christopher says, why Achane over Saquon? I didn't make the decision, my friend. I'd rather have Saquon. Brian says, how do you feel about the Zeke, Rico, and or the Najee Warren stacks? They are late picks. I mean, I'm completely fine with them. I'm not necessarily going into draft rooms with the plan of, okay, I'm going to take Najee Harris in the 7th round so I can take Jalen Warren in the 8th and monopolize the Pittsburgh touches. If it is a situation where I get Najee Harris in the 8th and then Jalen Warren falls to us in the 9th, I'm not going to shy away from that because I do think that there are some interesting paths to both guys hitting or their production coming in 2 different time periods and it advancing a unique team to the playoff tournament. It's not particularly something I'm never going into the draft with the plan to monopolize the backfield. In these tournament style contests, I'm not going to shy away from it if I can get them at a value, but that's not going to be plan A for me. Okay. We have Josh Downs, 123. Let's move this around. So we're still able to take 2 running backs. And I will say this for a fact. If Trevor Lawrence makes it back to us at pick 131, it was a mistake for us to take Brock Purdy where we did. If Lawrence makes it back to us, we probably should have taken Devin Singletary. We probably should have taken Tajay Spears instead of Brock Purdy. Since we have Evan Ingram, and the thing is, it's just very difficult to know if Lawrence is going to fall 13 picks past ADP when you need him. People talking about Achane gaining 15 pounds of pure muscle. I don't want to come across as a hater, but nobody's gaining 15 pounds of pure muscle in a 6-month off season without PEDs. I mean, you can bulk up, gain 15 pounds of muscle and some fat on that bad boy as well, but trend change, pretty much. Ford off the board. So Goff not in play for us. We are just going to go ahead. We're going to take Chase Brown. I haven't drafted a lot of Chase Brown, but it's not like I'm aggressively targeting Zach Moss either. And this is an offense that's supposed to score a ton of points. Goff and Herbert off the board. So I actually wouldn't mind here taking like Austin Eckler, monopolizing these Washington points, similar to what you were asking previously in the chat. But specifically, if you were looking at us already having 4 running backs, if we were to go with Eckler here in the 12th, we are going to put ourselves in a position where we're no longer able to take running backs throughout the rest of the draft. So it'd be really bad if we get a value that we like falling like 12 picks past ADP, and then all of a sudden we just are forced to go with the gross wide receiver instead. So we're going to balance things out. We'll take Gabe Davis here at 134, and we'll have Gabe Davis paired up with Evan Ingram, and we can make that consolidated bet on this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. And we needed another wide receiver, right? We're going to need a few more receivers in this draft. We only need one more running back. So I don't want to tie us up and lose some of the flexibility that we have through the rest of this by taking our last running back. Tajay says, which wide receiver for KC will be the most productive, in your opinion? So I think it's a different question if you're looking at the median projection versus if you were looking at the ceiling. Especially if you're looking at the ceiling in these underdog drafts where we are heavily incentivized to try to come away with the highest ceiling we can get in weeks 15, 16, 17. So if we are looking for the highest median projection, I think you're going to see total points scored through the course of this season most likely be Hollywood Brown. Just because Hollywood more likely than not scores more points than those guys, I'm not ranking Hollywood as wide receiver 1 just based off of that. Because you also have to take into consideration that the top 10 percentile outcome for Xavier Worthy is probably much higher than the top 10 percentile outcome for Hollywood Brown, who we've seen be very inefficient at the NFL level for 3 seasons now. So I would way rather draft Worthy, especially in these tournaments where we are trying to chase the upside, than I would Hollywood. But if you were going to say, Mason, you have to bet $100 on what Chiefs receiver scores the most points this season, because Hollywood's a rookie, probably starts off slow, because Rice has the suspension concerns, I would say Hollywood probably has the highest floor out of the group. Okay. So let's move this over. Tight end's definitely another position that we can go with. We can pretty much do anything here but quarterback. Quarterback's not in play, but we are good for running back, wide receiver, or tight ends. And yeah, looking at the guys that may be available to us here at 155 does make me feel good about the decision to go with Gabe Davis in comparison to Austin Eckler. Even though I'd way rather have Austin Eckler in a vacuum, I think from a draft strategy perspective, it's going to set us up nicer in these later rounds. Burgess says, good evening, Mason. Watched the Iron Man video today. Congrats on the finish, my friend. Didn't look easy. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it was honestly really fun. I'm definitely going to do another one next year. Yes asks if Rachaad White's going to be good next year, like at least a good RB4. If Rachaad White was my RB4, I'd be very happy. I mean, Rachaad White, from like an advanced efficiency perspective last season, looked like a very bad running back. But it may not matter if Rachaad White's just going to continue to get a crap ton of cheap volume in that offense. Deshaun goes, I'm going to go ahead. We'll take Luke Musgrave. I mean, if you look at the tight ends, the next guy is Ben Sinnott, Noah Fant. So I do think you have a massive teardrop after Musgrave here. And it does put us in a position where we have Evan Ingram, we have Luke Musgrave. We don't need to take a third tight end if we don't want to. Like if round 18, we really want to take a third tight end, I think we still can with our guys being at picks 83 and 155. But it's not inherently the plan to do so right now. Okay, so our next pick's going to be 179. Running backs will be like Dobbins, Elijah Mitchell, Khalil. Wide receiver is going to be Grosser, so we're going to take Demario Douglas. Hopefully it's not a wasted pick. I've drafted a lot of Douglas. I'm not a big Javon Baker guy. The issue you're going to have is this is just going to be a horrendous offense, or at least currently projects out to be a horrendous offense in New England. Okay. Smooth this over. I'm trying to think about if it would have potentially made sense to go wide receiver over Brian Robinson. I think it would have. Looking at this, I think it was a mistake to go Brian Robinson instead of Joshua Palmer where we did at 107. Please spam the chat. Let me know what combo you would rather have. Would you rather have the combo of Joshua Palmer and Austin Eckler? Or would you rather have the combo of Brian Robinson and Gabe Davis? Personally, I think I would probably rather have Palmer Eckler, so I think we made a mistake. I think Brian Robinson and Gabe Davis was the wrong way to go about that. We got 1 vote Palmer Eckler, 2 votes Palmer Eckler. Palmer Eckler. We have 1 vote Gabe Davis, another Eckler. Looks like it's actually more split than I thought. Teresa says Palmer went before your pick, though. No, I was 107, and Palmer goes 108. I definitely had the choice to take Palmer. I think we made the mistake not drafting Joshua Palmer. But it is what it is. You live and you learn. The benefit, I guess, maybe of having Gabe Davis is we were able to correlate with Evan Ingram, but obviously we didn't know we were going to get Gabe Davis later on. It just comes down to like your pockets of how I'm viewing underdog drafts this year is it comes down to your decisions of where you're allowed to deviate from wide receiver, essentially. Because almost 50% of your draft here has to be wide receiver if you want to win an underdog. You have to take 8, you have to take 9 of these guys. Unless you go with a ton super early, then you possibly get away with 7. But essentially, half your draft has to be wide receiver. I think across the board, the wide receivers are definitely grosser than the other positions. At least they feel that way. So you kind of have to pick where you're allowed to go with the other spots and get those right. KJ says, 12-team Happy BR, 3 wide receiver double flex league. We have Chase, Jefferson, St. Brown, Nico, HN, Olave, all cap. Beautiful, especially in a league where we can start 5 wide receivers. 11th pick options project to be Saquon, Adams, Harrison, London, Ayuk, Kyron, Etienne, Henry. Who are we going to be looking to take at the 1-2 turn? So if this is a league where you can start up to 5 wide receivers, I mean, I'm fine just going out there and continuing to hammer in receiver and just kind of like absolutely dominate the flexes. So if this was a start 2 wide receiver 1 flex league, I would say for sure we're taking Saquon over Adams. Here it's going to be a little bit tougher. I think here, especially if there's that flat tier wide receiver with Ayuk, London, Harrison, Adams, I may go Saquon round 1. And then on the way back around, I may take whatever wide receiver falls. I would probably rank them Ayuk, Harrison, London, Adams from a redraft perspective. But we're going to go ahead. We will take Antonio Gibson. ADP 165. We're getting him 179. He has some rushing upside. We just took Demario Douglas, so maybe we're making a bet that this offense is a little bit better than people expect it to be. So we're done drafting running back, though. I think when we have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, Chase Brown, Antonio Gibson, maybe we could go with one more running back if we really wanted. But if we decided to go with another running back, then we would essentially be locked and loaded into only 2 tight ends. So I think the decision here is we know we're going to take 8 wide receivers. Do we go with the 3rd tight end or do we go with the 6th running back? So let's see. Kurt says, any news on when we get the Flock Underdog tournament? I hope to have news regarding that this week. Hopefully, my friend. We'll see. And he says, definitely finished at 5 RBs. Just thinking we go with our first RB round 4, then rounds 8, 9, 11, 15. Yeah. I think I think we're probably done. And then tight end, we go rounds. We go with the 7-8 turn and the 13-14 turn. KJ says, those keepers are other teams. No keeper. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, my friend. So in that case, I think our answer still remains the same. It's just less exciting of a team. That would have been a phenomenal team. Now, Just Sherman says, do you keep backup quarterbacks on dynasty benches? It's going to depend on the depth of the league overall and how many roster spots there are. And also, obviously, it's going to depend on the formats that it is in dynasty. I would never consider it in a 1-quarterback league. If it is a super flex format where you roster 35-plus guys, then yes, it makes sense because those roster spots are pretty much worth nothing. But, I mean, I forgot exactly the depth of what your league is, my friend. But if you roster fewer than like 25 guys, I'm fine, obviously, rostering the high upside backup quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that have rushing upside, the guys like Justin Fields, Trey Lance. But it may be difficult to roster the guys that, like, even if they were to get in the start, they'd be projecting as like the quarterback 28, 29 on any individual week. Jeff says, 38 more likes. Hit that like button. Yes. I mean, please, if we are going to get another draft, do it now. Don't make me make our 18th round pick and then tell everyone bye and leave. And then all of a sudden, as I'm exiting the live stream, we hit 300 and then everybody screams at me. We have another 11 picks to hit 300 likes. And I'll be happy to fire up another one. And the next one we can do, we'll vote on if y'all want to do a Best Ball Mania or a sprint. Good for us to see the quarterbacks go, right? I mean, at this point, we're done drafting QB. When we have Stroud, Purdy, I feel no need to take another. Okay, so let's move this down. And Kale took 4 quarter. Oh, this was a bad decision, Kale. If you have Love, Caleb, Lawrence, you've already committed so much of your allocation here to QB. To go with the fourth quarterback, Geno Smith, if you look at the historical data with it's never worked out on Underdog before. Like, never. I don't see how that ever does. Okay. So, like I said, we're pretty much, we know we need at least one more receiver. Do we just grab Jonnu? We'll grab Jonnu, and then that means we are taking wide receiver around 18. We can go like Odell and say, okay, if Waddle goes down, all of a sudden we get the expanded target share for both pass catchers. And also, I've drafted a decent amount of Odell. If you look at the efficiency metrics for Odell, actually looked decent last year. I just don't know why he wasn't running that many routes. So we'll go ahead and we'll take Odell as our last receiver. But I feel like we are wasting a considerable amount of Odell picks. I'll tell you, I'm just kind of biased when it comes to Odell. Like I fell in love with Dynasty Fantasy Football back in like 2014. That's when Odell was drafted. So I have an Odell Giants jersey. I have like a Sammy Watkins, a Bills jersey. This next one was, okay, real quick, do we want a sprint or a Best Ball Mania? Sprint, BBM, sprints. Let's do a sprint. I taught a live stream $75 buy-in. So we got the 25. Now we're going to do the 50. So we are in the sprint lobby for anybody wanting to join with us. So looking at this is a setup where it's cumulative scoring for weeks 15 through 17 with the overall tournament. So I actually really do like the 3-week final. It's a $50 buy-in, $1 million prize pool, $100,000 for first, $50,000 for second. So I'm actually going to be drafting a ton of these teams. Now, personally, what I'm probably going to be doing with a lot of these underdog tournaments is I'm going to spend the majority of my time drafting in the new tournaments when they drop because they'll have the 15-second timer, or at least that's what the last few did. And I love the 15-second timer so damn much that I don't know. I just don't think I can get away from it. If I have it as an option, I'm doing the 15-second timer. And then outside of that, I think the other two tournaments I personally really like that I'm going to be drafting in will be the Sprint and Best Ball Mania. Weekly winners, I'm not a big fan of. The Eliminator, and that's just personally for me. I know a lot of other people who are more DFS-centric will really like weekly winners. The Eliminator, I think, is very interesting. It's just, I don't know if I'm any good at it. At least I wasn't last year. We'll just go ahead and we'll take Chase at 4. And we got Henry out here with us at 1. Let me know in the live chat if you were in this draft with us, please. Just Sherman says, so Jelani over Flacco, Pickett, Aiden O'Connell, and a Superflex 25 spot. I personally would, unless you think O'Connell has a shot to start this year. Okay. Henry says, I've done 2 Mason drafts all year. Both pick 1 sprints. Well, happy to have you, my friend. Happy to have you. BSP in here at 3. Noah in here at 5. We got Jewish McCaffrey out here to take the fish's money. I'm the fish, clearly. But let's go. Says, good morning. Sprint draft filled in 10 seconds. Had to check, see if you're sure. Yeah, you know, my guy. Devin out here at 10. Thank you so much for drafting with us. And Brett says, any issue with taking a Monra at 4 feels like a much safer play. If it's a full PPR format, then I agree. I think you can go with St. Brown over Chase. The thing is, Underdog's going to be a half PPR format. You're a little more incentivized to go for touchdowns and big plays, given that it's spike week potential for weeks 15, 16, 17. And also, I'm not trying to be like super skewed Chase versus St. Brown in terms of our exposures this year. Like I've said this before, but all the receivers there in that first tier with Lamb, Tyreek, Chase, St. Brown, Jefferson, I'm not really going to be taking any massive stances and going, okay, I'm going to be at 16% Chase, I'm going to be at 2% St. Brown, or vice versa, you know? So I understand the thought process that St. Brown has the more guaranteed target funnel. The Lions project out to be the second best offense in the NFL this season, but I believe the Bengals project out to be the 5th, according to Vegas Sportsbooks. So specifically for Underdog best ball drafts, I'm probably going to keep it Chase. Whereas if it was a redraft league, full PPR, there I think you can make an argument for St. Brown. Caden says, is Allen, Curtis, Keon too much? No, I mean, if you wanted to go with Keon, Curtis, and Josh Allen for that double stack, I think that's great. I don't like the Curtis Samuel price in a vacuum, but obviously from that construction, it makes sense. Yeah, if y'all want another draft, If we hit 500 likes, we'll fire up another one. And like I said, y'all can pick between. Actually, I only have $50 on our underdog account. So the next one would be a Best Ball Mania. Next one would be a BBM. Okay, so Nico goes pick 18. Waddle off the board at 19. Taylor goes. I mean, it would have been beautiful to get Taylor this far past ADP, obviously. I really like Kyren Williams in round 3. So personally, I'm taking a lot of these round 2 receivers. I am underweight Saquon Barkley so far this year. We can mix in a little more Barkley. If you look at the ADP specifically for the sprint in comparison to Best Ball Mania, I don't think you had a ton of Barkley at the 2-3 turn just yet. Obviously, going forward, it looks like this is where Barkley's price is going to be. So I think there should be a decent amount of Chase Barkley teams. But we are underweight round 2 Barkley, overweight round 3 Kyren already. So might as well mix in Barkley. Because, I mean, Barkley does project out to be the best offense of his NFL career, is a player that we know is capable of catching the football, and has the size to be a 3-9 option. So if we were to go Kyren Williams in round 3, it forces our hand where we're going to have to go wide receiver round 4. Where I don't necessarily know if we want to lock ourselves into that spot just yet. So we'll go ahead. We'll take Metcalf. I am severely underweight Metcalf at the moment. So this is just going to be our balance it out team. Let me pull up how much Metcalf and Barkley I have. Maybe I am in line with Barkley. Actually, I have 6% Barkley, so it's not that bad. And I have 3% Metcalf. Okay. Noah says how to snatch up Taylor past ADP. I would like my team a whole lot more if you gave me Jonathan Taylor at 21, my guy. If we got Taylor at 21, I would have been freaking pumped. And interesting to see you followed up with Kyren at 29. Like I said, Kyren is my favorite round 3 pick at the moment. I am severely overweight Kyren Williams. Just what I personally find is I really like my teams when I go wide receiver, then Kyren in round 3. If I mix in Jonathan Taylor in round 2, if I mix in Saquon Barkley in round 2, I find it very difficult to then make Kyren Williams work in the 3rd round personally. But I will be very interested to see if you're able to pull it off, my friend. And Lee, thank you for the reminder. Russell says he would have went Cup. Henry says, this is my first share of Neighbors in 39 drafts. I just think it's going too high. It's funny. Neighbors is one of the players where if you look at the underdog ADP in comparison to regular redraft leagues, I mean, Neighbors is just a night and day difference with this price. So I take Neighbors. I think he has an ADP of 26. If he falls like to pick 31 or beyond, typically I have been mixing in Neighbors, but I agree with you for him to, because if you remove Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors is like the most expensive rookie wide receiver that we may have ever seen on Underdog. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but going at the 2-3 turn, I don't think any rookie wide receiver has ever gone here on Underdog drafts. Obviously, ignore Harrison. Harrison is so far of an outlier compared to what we've historically seen. And for Neighbors to get that, I agree he's that kind of talent from a prospect perspective. He should be given that respect. But if you look at the Giants offense, the Giants currently project out to be a bottom 3 offense in the NFL this year. So the Neighbors price does seem pretty aggressive. Okay. Let's swing this around. McLaurin goes 43. So now that we see the wide receivers that are off the board, I am thanking God I did not go ahead and take Kyren in round 3. I wanted to take Kyren in round 3. Like I said, round 3, Kyren Williams, probably my favorite early round pick at the moment, but it just puts you in a very compromising position, I find. Where like Whimsical is forced to go like Hollywood here instead of Travis Kelce. And I don't want to be forced into that position. So we're going to get Kelce here at 45. It's no secret to anybody. When we get Kelce at 45, the hope is that we get Mahomes at 52. Is it a guarantee? No, it's not. But it's a possibility, which would be really cool. Henry says, couldn't let Kelce fall to 48, could you now? No, I couldn't. At least you get McBride, my friend. McBride, not too bad. Okay. Russell says, you called it. Yeah, I mean, y'all know I am the first person to say I'm an idiot and I make mistakes constantly in these drafts, but I try to learn as we do them and try to come up with better solutions. So it's the dream. This is the absolute dream. My favorite drafts by a wide margin at the moment on Underdog are teams where you're able to go with Andrews Lamar at the 4-5 turn. And once a blue moon, you can get Kelce Mahomes. And what's even more rare, but what's even better, is sometimes Josh Allen will fall to you in the middle of the 4th and Dalton Kincaid will fall to you in the middle of the 5th. That elite quarterback tight end combo of Kelce Mahomes, Lamar Andrews, Allen Kincaid, if you're able to get those stacks, I'm just in love with the team, almost regardless. So yes, this is, in my mind, a very pretty start so far. We're definitely falling behind at wide receiver, so almost no matter what, we're going to be forced to go wide receiver at 69 here in this draft. But it is what it is. Juice McCaffrey says, was hoping for Andrews, Lamar, Kelce Mahomes, no dice. I mean, right there. And the thing is, when you get boxed out, let me know what you think about this, my friend. Are you drafting a lot of these running backs that go with the 4-5 turn? This year, have you been drafting a lot of Etienne, Pacheco, Jacobs? Because personally, I talked about this earlier in the live stream. In a vacuum, I really like the running back prices there. I think they're some of the best round 4 or 5 running backs that we've ever seen in terms of the setup for their 2024 seasons. But just personally, I'm taking so much of Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Lamar, Mahomes, that even though I kind of want to be overweight on Etienne, Pacheco, Jacobs, I'm finding that I can't, from a construction perspective, get them very often. Jimmy D says, it feels like every tight end's been dropping more and more by the day. I think the worst mistake Underdog drafters have made is looking at what happened the year before and assuming it's just going to repeat and happen the year again, the next year. So elite tight end last year didn't work. You had Sam Laporta coming out of absolutely nowhere in the late rounds and crushing and winning tournaments. But just because that happened with Laporta last year doesn't mean you're going to get that late round guy this year. Drew says, high on Pacheco, even with the field and ETN, lower on Jacobs. I like elite tight end and agreed you can't make too many detours. Yeah, I'm actually very low exposed Jacobs right now. But that's naturally because, I think when he was going round 3, it was kind of ridiculous. But now at this point, with his ADP based off the offense he's in, I would definitely prefer Jacobs over James Cook still. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Ladd McConkey. I really do like the George Kittle price tag, but we really can't afford to do anything but take a wide receiver here when we only have 2 receivers through the first 5 rounds. So we're going to go Ladd. And then on the way back around here at 76, we can set ourselves up with a JSN selection. I haven't taken a lot of JSN, but where we will is where we're just straight up behind at wide receiver, like we are in this draft, where we have DK Metcalf, so it potentially makes sense for us to go through and take another Seattle receiver. But he's gone, so that's no longer an option for us. And we will take the falling knife that nobody wants at the moment. We will take Keon Coleman. I want to reiterate, didn't like him as a prospect, but if best ball drafters thought it was a good idea to take Gabe Davis 2 years ago at the 3-4 turn just because he was attached to Josh Allen, even though he had no shot to be the wide receiver one behind Stephon Diggs. Now Keon Coleman with a very real shot to be that wide receiver one. I'm willing to go through, and I'm willing to chase the spike week upside with the touchdowns in this offense. Joe says, who do you recommend taking in late rounds? Can you define, in the chat, can you define late rounds for me? Juice McCaffrey says, I think Kittle should be going around earlier. So he's been my fallback elite tight end, allowing me to get more of ETN, Pacheco, and Cook at that range. I haven't drafted a lot of Kittle, which obviously is very scary because Kittle does have the possibility of putting up 35 points in week 17. So being underweight Kittle is going to be a little scary. And what's also scary about potentially being underweight Kittle at the moment is what happens if you do see a wide receiver trade in San Francisco. Where then at that point, say Ayuk gets dealt from San Francisco. Kittle's going where Andrews, McBride are. At least he should be. Let me see how much Kittle I have. I have 6% Kittle, which in comparison to 12% Andrews and 13% Kincaid. Okay. Let's see. Did we get Joe telling us what rounds? 15 to 18. I find myself taking a lot of Michael Wilson, Jalen Tolbert, Tucker Kraft, Chuba, and handcuffs. Okay. I'm going to be very honest with you, my friend. Last year, where we got crushed and where the field lapped us is I did a horrible job of identifying the smashes in rounds 17 and 18, such as Tank Dell, Puka, Kyron. I drafted none of them. I don't know if it's because of that I'm so scarred where I feel like I'm not going to be able to successfully find the next guys this year. We're going to have to go Jameson Williams. We're catching up on receiver. It does give us this ability to take Goff later on. But yeah, last year I did a very poor job of identifying the winners from that range. Like I said, Dell, Kyron, Puka, we all know. This year, I'll tell you who I'm drafting, but I want to reiterate, I don't know if you should be you should be following me. So just based off the screen right now, the names that I've been clicking a lot, I've been clicking Tyler Algier a considerable amount when we need a running back. I've been clicking Adam Thielen a considerable amount when we need a wide receiver. I do not feel good about it. Going a little bit further down, I agree, fine with Chuba here. I don't know if we've drafted him a lot just because usually I'm done drafting running back by this point, but Bucky Irving's price tag doesn't seem that bad to me if people truly believe that Rachaad White's just not talented with the efficiency you saw last year. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, love Roschon in this range. And at wide receiver, don't listen to me. I don't know why I'm doing this. I feel like I'm just a fish, and I've just seen these guys produce in the past, so my brain can just take one step and say, oh, maybe they do it again. At wide receiver, round 18, I've taken a decent amount of Odell and a decent amount of DJ Chark. But I don't know if I'd recommend that to anybody. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take David Njoku. I mean, we went through and we made that video looking at the tight end data that we've seen over the past 4 years, identifying that it makes sense if you want to go with a bully tight end strategy on Underdog to take a tight end inside the first 5 rounds and then follow it up with another tight end inside the first 11 rounds. I think David Njoku, this price tag is completely reasonable. I think he can outscore the wide receivers in this range. I feel like we've done an okay job catching up a receiver up to this point. So we're going to go ahead. We will take David Njoku here at 100, especially because I feel very gross about the tight ends later on. Nick says people have forgotten about Tim Patrick. If Tim Patrick comes out and has a strong season this year, and if Tim Patrick is on the field for 2 wide receiver sets, I mean, people are going to lose their mind. I mean, the Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims drafters are screwed now. The good news for those people is we have not seen Tim Patrick in 2 years. It's a completely different coaching style. I would be very surprised if Tim Patrick did anything. But if he does, it's gonna change some things. Juice McCaffrey says, unrelated, but congrats on the triathlon. You're a beast. What was the inspiration for doing that? Appreciate it, my guy. I actually uploaded a video on the channel a couple days ago, like essentially just going in more depth about it, but just trying to find like a new challenge for myself to do was the main thing. Just trying to find something else that I feel like I could challenge myself. And if I accomplished it, I'd feel proud for doing it. And that was like the next thing. Jivy says, Chark and Odell are not worth it. You have to pick young players in those rounds rather than washed players. I probably agree with you, my friend. The young guys that are that aren't getting drafted in every draft at the moment, however, like let's look at these players. Malik Washington, no thanks. Brendan Rice, I mean, you could see Rice doing something because the setup is similar to what you had with Puka last year. It's just, I don't know if I don't have the imagination for it. That's maybe what it is. I don't have the imagination for it just because I haven't seen it before. My brain maybe has too hard of a time imagining it happening in the future. Elijah says, why did he take Keon Coleman over Kenneth Walker? I did not, my friend. Kenneth Walker went before Keon Coleman in this draft. But let me know in the chat, who are your favorite round 18 picks? Like I said, even when we had a ton of success on Underdog 2 years ago, we didn't do so with nailing round 18 picks. And the guys, just to let you know, that I was drafting in round 18 consistently last year, I was drafting a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson and I was drafting a lot of Josh Downs. But I think like a good example is I was getting Josh Downs a ton around 18 last year, and Josh Downs is a significantly better wide receiver prospect than any other rookie wide receiver going in round 18 this year. Okay. So Mike Williams, Brock Purdy, Dontavian Wicks, all off the board. Shakir goes. So obviously we are not taking any more tight ends. It could be an interesting spot to take a receiver. And if we do, I think we can allow ourselves to get up to 6 running backs. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take an old dusty Brandon Cooks here, 124. Looking at how the ADP sets up for us at 141, I think that there will be a decent group of running backs that end up falling to us at the 12-13 turn. So let's take Cooks. Good offense, cheap opportunity. And we'll send up a prayer that we get some running backs that we like on the way back around. Looney says Theo Johnson for no reason whatsoever. Let me check the setup for Theo Johnson. Aaron says Jelani Woods. Jelani clearly, I mean, he has a path to playing time. What was the draft capital for Theo Johnson? Pick 107. Clear path. Even the wide receivers there don't project out to dominate targets. So honestly, not a bad call at all. Trey Tucker over John Mechie, I'd say. I mean, John Mechie would be, it would be nice to see John Mechie come out and do something, but it's not happening. Marcus taking a lot of Theo Johnson. Andy says Will Shipley. If you knew how that depth chart shook out. I would 100% agree. Let's pull up the running backs that are on that depth chart. Really, you're just competing with Gainwell? Okay, so let's move this over. We get exactly what we want. We get a running back that I love falling to us here at 141. We get Charbonnet, has a receiving role, has a ton of upside if you were to see an injury to Kenneth Walker. I think if Zach Charbonnet was in this year's draft class, he would be the RB1 in this year's class. I think he's a better prospect than Benson. If Jonathan Brooks was fully healthy, I think Jonathan Brooks is a better prospect, but if Jonathan Brooks isn't fully healthy. So we are QB, running back, wide receiver. Quarterbacks, we don't really have anybody in play for us. Here, I mean, you have Stafford, Rodgers. We don't have any Rams. We don't have any Packers. Those quarterbacks aren't going to run the ball. You kind of need to have them stacked up. Our next quarterback option would be like Geno at the 14-15 turn. Ryan says, what do you make of the Chargers running back situation? I think Gus is most likely the guy. By no means is it a guarantee. I think Gus doesn't have receiving upside. The Chargers situation is so interesting, and I think it comes down primarily to what you're expecting with J.K. Dobbins' health. If you think the reports are true that J.K. Dobbins looks good and that Dobbins may actually be relevant this year, then I just don't know. I just have no idea. I made an entire video of it, but I don't know, my friend. Joe Lowe says, I have 40% James Conner. Am I effed? So you have the coaching staff report coming out this week saying essentially, or maybe it was last week, I don't know when, but essentially saying that James Conner's the guy. Trey Benson is only going to be the guy if James Conner gets hurt. So what you're going to see now is James Conner's rising up ADP. He's probably going to keep rising for another week or two with how it looks. So what I would do if I was at 40% James Conner is I would go, cool, I'm happy I got him cheap. Now that he's more expensive, let's let that exposure fall down about 20%. I don't need to draft him for a while, and I can still be severely overweight compared to the rest of the field at a better average cost as well. So Marcus says 3 rookie wide receivers. Yes, I find myself these sucker drafting these rookie receivers. We go Ricky here at 148. Ricky falling every day it goes by looks like it's maybe less likely that one of these Niners receivers gets dealt. And obviously, it's kind of what we would need here for him to return a considerable amount of value on this ADP. Maybe he gives us a couple of random touchdown weeks, but Dress says, I have quite a bit of Dobbins at that range. I think Harbaugh is going to run the ball nonstop. So, Corey from FSE and I recorded a hour-long best ball podcast for flockfantasy.com last week, and he was shilling me pretty hard on Dobbins. My issue with Dobbins, and I know this is a dumb thing to say, but he's making $50,000 guaranteed. So with him making $50,000 guaranteed, I'm like, I don't know. There's no team investment. There's no real ties to him. CJ says, how should I feel about the Chicago receivers this year, and Caleb? I think I'm underweight Keenan Allen. It's funny because Roma is the same ADP as other rookie receivers that aren't nearly strong enough prospects. But if you look historically, rookie quarterbacks outside of Deshaun Watson and... Okay, thinking through this, I think we're going to go Chuba couple different reasons. One, if you look at the quarterback setup, obviously Geno's going to be the plan on the way back around at 172 to pair up with Metcalf. But this team here that took Jackson Smith and Jigba, they already have Lamar and Cousins, so they really can't take another quarterback. And that team there only had James Conner, Tony Pollard, Blake Corum. So it was very likely that they took another RB, and that RB more likely than not was going to be Chuba Hubbard. And the thing is, even if we end up not getting Geno Smith, which I personally expect that we will get, we could go to Sean Watson, and we have the setup with David Njoku. So I think you were going to see the running backs go here. I wasn't worried about the JSN team taking Geno because of their quarterback situation already. And even if we were to miss out on Geno, we still have another play as a possibility. Jimmy, this is, if you had to have 100% of a player this season, who would it be? At ADP, if I'd have 100% of a player, it would be Jordan Addison. Addison's my most drafted guy. I believe last I checked, I've meant 21% of leagues. I didn't draft him in either of these two, so now it's probably down to 20%, but yeah, we have a lot of Addison. But yeah, let me recap our team. So we get Geno here, so we can go in on Seattle. We have the passing down running back in Charbonnet. We have DK Metcalf. But a wide receiver, we're currently sitting with Chase, Metcalf, Ladd, Keon, Jameson, Brandon Cooks, Sticky Ricky. Running back, we have Saquon Barkley, Gus Edwards, Zach Charbonnet, Chuba Hubbard. Quarterback, we have Mahomes stacked up with Kelsey. We have Geno double stacked with Metcalf and Charbonnet, as if that matters. And then at tight end, we have Travis Kelce and David Njoku. So this is a team in which I think we can get away with drafting 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 receivers, and 2 tight ends. But I think we're more likely to get away with the 6 running back build in the sprint in comparison to Best Ball Mania. Ryan says, who would win this dynasty trade? Stroud, Kyron in a first, or Brees and Young? If it is a super flex league, it's going to be the Stroud side by a mile. If it is a 1 quarterback league, it's still probably the Stroud side, but definitely a lot closer. Okay, so good for us to see as many tight ends go as possible, right? I mean, when we have Kelsey and Njoku, we're for sure wanting tight ends get drafted. Smooth this around. So we are only running back receiver through the rest of this. So essentially, going back to the Chargers running back discussion, I want to write off Dobbins. But with the reports coming out of LA, it's difficult to if you assume that there's any validity to it, which I don't know if it is or not. Let me pull up the most recent stuff that we have with Dobbins. I don't know. I'm not taking another rookie receiver here. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take Roschon. I know a lot of people don't like Roschon. It's probably my biased Texas Longhorn coming out, but Huckamorns, Swifts, been perennially a disappointing running back. Going back to what we were talking about with Khalil Herbert, Herbert's looked decent. But he's looked decent, and then this team went out there, drafted Roschon, signed Deonta Foreman. The following year, then signed DeAndre Swift. So I don't know if this coaching staff really wants him. Cheeky Option, happy to see my friend. Hey, Mason, love the Iron Man video. Good news, my guy. I hope that you saw this, and honestly, happy to see it so I can remind everybody this. We are having a meetup in Austin. It's either going to be August 22nd or the 23rd. And also, there are going to be a bunch of other guys there. There'll be the FSE guys there. There'll be the land guys there, the domain guys there. Be a bunch of fantasy football YouTubers. So mark your calendar, Austin, Texas, the 22nd or 23rd. Who are we wanting to go with here? We'll go Tracy. And then we're going to take one more receiver. But don't know who the receiver's probably going to be. It's probably going to be someone bad. Probably someone that I shouldn't have drafted. But it is what it is. But hopefully, like, hell yes. I figured you'd be there, my guy. Happy to hear it. Drew says, Mason, what position would you go with our last pick? So, right or wrong, my guy, what I'm assuming, and you kind of see this with what I did in drafting 6 RBs, is I think in comparison to Best Ball Mania with the sprint, I think you can get away with drafting the extra running back and taking the 6th guy. But let me see what's on the squad. So wide receiver, Lamb, Smith, Keenan, Lockett, Mike, Shakir, Luke. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 7? 4. Has to be a receiver, right? We already have 3 tight ends. Can't take another. 2 QBs. I don't think you can take another QB with this setup. Yeah, I mean, I would be going with another receiver, my guy. Fafui says it was 117 degrees in my town, North Los Angeles County. Brutal, my friend. Brutal. But, yeah, I think that should be it. Really do appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this fine Saturday night. As always, thank you. I hope that I can draft with you again soon. You can come out here and crush me whenever you want. And yeah, we have the Flock meetup happening August 22nd or 21st in Austin, Texas. Regardless, should be a ton of fun. I'll get y'all more information regarding that. Bunch of fantasy football YouTubers are going to be there. Yours truly is going to be there. So hope I get to see you. And yeah. Thank you for everything. Hope you have a great weekend. And I'll be live tomorrow night if you want to